Hello, 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 and welcome to Rad Talk, where sports and medicine collide. I'm Dennis, and my wonderful co-host.
Gage. And on today's episode, we're going to get a little bit more into traveling. Dennis is going to talk about lodging specifically. We have a couple Reddit questions, topics, we want to get to. And then we're going to get to my favorite segment, which is, the fun question at the end. So we'll go ahead and I'll let Dennis get started talking about traveling.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about living, lodging, whatever you want to call it. I kind of talked a little bit about it last time and in prior episodes. I think people choose to live differently when they're on the road. I know I've lived in a lot of different places, a lot of found spaces to live in a lot of different ways. Some of the ways that I found them, you go to the website Airbnb, you go to VRBO even sometimes. Furnished Finder is probably my favorite one, just because I know that I'm coming in. They have a set rate. Usually in Furnished Finder, it's a minimum stay of 30 to 90 days. So they know that you're going to stay for a month or 2 months or 3 months or longer. And so I think the most important thing you can do with your lodging, your living, is to have a spiel ready. And I think as whether you're a travel CT or X-ray, MRI, or whatever you do traveling wise, I think that you want to explain to them. Usually I say like, "Hi, my name's Dennis. I'm a travel nurse," because as a person who owns the property, most people know travel nurse. If I say I'm a travel sonographer or I'm a travel technologist, they're going to be like, "What the heck are you talking about? Like, what does that mean?" And so I'm not trying to create more questions for them. I'm trying to have them understand it, accept what I'm telling them, know that like, wow, okay, this is what I want. Because is a rentee, I think I want to get paid. I don't want you to ruin my stuff. Mm-hmm. I want you to be there for a limited time. I don't want you to start squatting on me, whatever that is. And so, and I know travel nurse, like most people have heard like, oh, travel nurse. Okay. So like they're going to be here for X amount of time. If you've been to the hospital, especially, the demographics. If somebody older owns the property and they've had lots of hospital visits, they might have encountered travel nurses. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you had, your person who did your CT exam, you might see for a minute or, for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and you might not have that conversation with, oh yeah, I'm just here, I come and go. So if you don't know that exists, then something you don't know. And so I say, I'm Dennis, I'm a travel nurse. I've been traveling for X amount of time. So you give them like confidence that, okay, this isn't you're not my first stay. And when I'm looking to move in, the duration of my stay, the hospital that I'll be working at. And so that gives them some more confidence of, okay, he's working at a hospital. So, if you're working for a hospital, you have a background check, you've been vetted, you don't have any, usually crazy
red flags. Yeah.
Red flags, I guess, in the legality world, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And so they know that. So you're vetted by the hospital. I know I'm probably going to get paid. You say I don't travel with any pets personally, so I think you would tell them like I have a schnauzer, like whatever you have, or a cat or whatever. And so you just put everything out there. And so I feel like I've had the most success with that. I've used other ways and said, hey, can I stay at your place from this date to this date? And sometimes I don't get responses, but I feel like by having that pre-made spiel, I get so many more responses. And I think I go ahead of the line. And I don't know if that's true, but I feel like I go ahead of the line in some facets than others. I also, one of the places that I was able to find was also on Facebook, which it was kind of like a godsend for me because I was looking on Airbnb, I was looking on Furnished Finder, couldn't find anything, had posted to travel nursing Facebook groups, travel sonography. And I think that's a huge one too, is if you're on Facebook, join as many travel nursing, travel sonographer, travel x-ray, travel, whatever nomad life groups that you can, and post it out there, and also use that Facebook search to search and see if anybody else has posted and said, hey, like I have a place in Colorado Springs. Would anybody want to stay here, kind of a thing. And so I posted it out to the world on one of the travel groups, and a homeowner reached out to me, and she had like a condo, and it was like 15 minutes from the hospital that I was working at, fully furnished, beautiful. Actually, one of the nicest beds I'd ever slept on. I think it was like
good.
like $10,000, like sleep Tempur-Pedic mattresses, whatever it was. Phenomenal. Like it had all the settings, whatever. And so I loved her. Ended up loving her place. She actually, a lot of times, sometimes I'll get to see the place, and sometimes I blindly, like if I'm really feeling like I don't know, like I've been in a hotel for a bit or whatever, like whatever it is, I'll just accept it, because I know that if you don't say like let's go, somebody else might say let's go. And so and that's the travel world that we live in. Like furnished housing is hard to come by. And I mean, I know other people who have gone the other route where they rent an apartment and then they'll go and rent the bed, all the furniture, and I think I've never gone that route, but I feel like it's pricey, because you have to have them come out, deliver all the furniture. You have to make sure you take good care of it, obviously, because
you want to say, because then you could get double charged. Yeah,
like if it's got a bunch of stains or whatever. Obviously, you don't want to stain anybody's stuff in general, but if you do, I guess it's on the homeowner that's allowing you to stay there, and maybe they charge you the cleaning fee, and that kind of covers whatever issues you may have done or whatever.
Yeah.
But taking it back, if it's new furniture, I mean, I feel like they might upcharge you even more, and so you're going to be paying more money. And then I think it's worth in your time. And so I also highly, highly recommend. I've used Airbnb, and what you want to do there. Yeah. And
they're
what you
kind
want
of getting out of hand, though, aren't they? With all their, I know they're getting a lot of hot water for a whole bunch of fees, and it's just becoming more expensive than if you just go to a hotel. Whereas in the beginning, the whole point of Airbnb was that it was more convenient and it was a little bit cheaper than a hotel.
Right. I think it's probably comparative to a hotel at this point. I think you stay at an Airbnb because you have versus a hotel. It's not just one big building. Like it's usually like its own place or house or whatever it is. I think where you can, and this is where I think the spiel comes into play so much more, because I've used Airbnb, and what I do is I say literally the same spiel that I would say to the furnish finder. Like, I'm a travel nurse. I would be here for this amount of days. I'm not just staying for a week. This is not just a vacation for me. I'm not going to go stay at a place for some vacation. I'm going to be working at the hospital. These are the days I'll be working, or whatever you want to say to make the homeowner feel more comfortable. And usually I say, is this rate negotiable? And sometimes they have it built into Airbnb that if you stay greater than 7 days or whatever that duration is, the homeowner gives an X amount percentage of a discount, which sometimes that discount is significant, but sometimes that discount still isn't justifying you not staying in the hotel. And so I think that's where, when you reach out and say, hey, I'll be staying there for 13 weeks, 14 weeks, 6 months, whatever it is, would you be willing to take, and maybe you can throw out a number that kind of starts that conversation and say, okay, so now they know that, okay, I've got a renter at the hospital. I'm renting out my house for 3 months. I will have somebody in there guaranteed.
Yeah.
Versus somebody who, I might rent it for a couple of days here, a week here, depending on where you're at. Maybe you're not in a location that you get a lot of awesome rent. You're not in, Miami or Hawaii, certain spot or whatever it is. And so people aren't chomping at the bit to rent out your property. And so now I know I'm rented out for 3 months. My place isn't an awesome place to live at. It's got a television, it's got a bed, it doesn't have a hot tub or all
the necessities.
It just got the essential things that make sense for somebody who's a traveler. My property's kind of close to the hospital, and so that's your big selling point to the staff. And so I think that's where you have the spiel, you set it out, you put a price tag, and it's kind of tough with I'm not going to go into the negotiating style, because if you throw out a price and they accept it, then you're I shot myself in the foot.
Should have gone lower. Yeah.
Should have gone lower. But I think if you're willing to throw out a price into the Ethereum, I think that you should be ready for that, except if they do it and kind of live with that. I think otherwise I would, I don't know. I think it just makes sense to try to either throw out or not throw out. But having that conversation, that's where you're going to get possibly that lower price, because
Yeah.
everybody knows if you buy in bulk, the price kind of goes a little bit down. And so I'm staying longer, so they're more likely to do it.
I mean,
I
the
think.
worst they can say is no, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. And
you might as
the
well
worst,
try.
and I've come back. I've thrown out, the psychology, the low ball prices,
Yeah.
and see what they say. I mean, you don't want to offend somebody, because people will get offended about the price if you go ridiculously low. But I think if you leave that off and maybe they start the conversation and they say, sometimes I've had places take off, that were expensive, take off like $700 a month,
Yeah.
which is like that's a lot of
Substantial.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for what I'm paying monthly, if you took off $700, like that's huge. And I think there, in the other avenue that I've also done, so I've done that quite a bit for years. Another avenue that I did, and this is kind of an interesting one, that you kind of think of it like maybe like a retirement thing that people do, is I've also been in a camper.
Yeah.
I bought a truck, and I bought a camper, and I traveled in a camper for 3 years, which I think is, if you're really into getting into like the nomad lifestyle, I think a camper makes perfect sense. I think if you have pets, you want to talk about something that makes the most amount of sense. Like if you can get a camper, whether it's an RV or a Class B, Class A, Class C, whatever fits you most financially, or for what you need, because you can have all the pets you want. A lot of places have dog parks on the campgrounds. The
Yeah.
really nice ones have, they have pools, they have hot tubs, they have, checkers boards, chess boards. I've seen it places that had nothing, which was great too, because if you have a TV, you don't necessarily need, like, you can use they have devices that you can, if you want to watch TV, you can hook your telephone into the TV and it'll stream stuff straight from your phone
Oh
into the
yeah.
TV. So if you want to watch TV, so like, and there's so many other, like, you're not completely, like, they're like, like,
Off
how is
the
it, was it
grid.
like
Yeah.
living, yeah, you're like
Yeah.
living, like, how's it like living completely off the grid? And I'm like, I don't know, like the hot tub's great. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
and
it's a
so I
campground,
think,
guys. It's not like
yeah, at the campground,
we're
guys,
not
like,
we're not in the movie Deliverance where we're just taking a wrong
yeah,
turn in like
yeah,
rural Kentucky or something.
I'm not out eating berries in the middle of
Yeah.
nowhere, like, trying to survive. But
How does it compare money wise? Living on a camp, like paying the camp fee or whatever it's called
yeah,
to live on the campground.
so I can give like some crazy examples, and so I've been doing this a while. So like, one of the first campgrounds that I stayed in, maybe 2019 or something like that, 2018. It was to stay at the spot. It was $375 a month.
Was that in Springfield?
So that was, yeah, that was in a
Wow. Yeah.
Springfield location
Yeah.
somewhere in the United States.
Yeah.
Uh, and so talk about, and that include water, sewer, trash, electric, and it had a bathhouse. Not the nicest of bathhouses. Sometimes you showered with frogs,
Yeah.
but for
For $400 a month,
for literally $400 a month, and you could you get a gym, and that's another thing. It's like, get a gym membership. Like, get a $10
Yeah.
Planet Fitness gym membership.
I think a lot of truckers do that. They get a gym membership and they'll just shower at the gym, and
Yep.
if you want to work out, do whatever. But
I think that's like one of the smartest things you can do, is you get that gym membership, and you go there and you shower and you get your things done. You brush you do all your stuff, and then you don't have to shower. Or I had a camper as well that had a shower. You get so much more. My shower was not the largest shower. And so for me to be in there, and then like the hot water wouldn't last the longest. And so I would go and shower in the bathhouses. And some of the bathhouses they were so nice. One of the more expensive places, I stayed in a place in Colorado that was like $1,800 a month, where Yeah, which I ended up finding an apartment there on Facebook that I used that was the same price. That was the nice one with the bed and everything like that. So I was probably getting screwed royally on that one. And then when I was in Los Angeles, I stayed at a campground that was $1,500 a month. But I was talking to my coworkers who were also travelers, and they're paying $3,000.
Oh yeah.
To stay in Los Angeles. So I'm like, man, this is $1,500 a month. This is super expensive. But you have to remember where you are. Like $1,500 a month in Los Angeles, like it's not as expensive. It's a steal. Versus, and that campground had had a gym, had a dog park. Movies were actually shot there. So sometimes you'd be driving in and they'd be like shooting different movies there. And so, I mean, but that's Los Angeles, it's Hollywood.
Yeah.
And so you have a plethora of like different prices that you will have. I think a campground is going to be the cheaper one, but you're also, if you're buying a camper, then you have the expense of the RV or the camper, along with if you're
maintaining it, gas, all that other stuff,
the tires, the blah blah blah. And then if you have a truck that you're pulling it with, it can be a hassle, like hooking everything up and traveling from coast to coast with this giant camper. But I mean, it's also a fun thing too, because being that the contracts are 13 weeks, it can be a hassle, because if you legit have to leave every 3 months and lug that thing, like that can be a pain in the neck. But if you're there for like 6 months or 9 months or whatever it is, like it becomes not as big of a deal to pick up and go. Or if you just get used to it, I mean, you get really good at like not fixing stuff, but there's like, talk to other campers. Things are going to break. Like make sure, I think if you do get a camper, one of the biggest tips I recommend is, if you're buying a new camper, change the tires immediately. First thing you do is change all the tires. One of my buddies was a traveler, bought his first camper, driving along with his truck, going to his first ever place of travel, and his tire blew out. Highway. Yeah. Didn't know it. Was dragging this camper, ruining somebody pulled up beside of him and said, "Hey, like your tire blew." He goes back and like his camper is just not fried, but man, like you blow a tire and something's like hitting the ground or whatever, sparks or whatever. Like he had to fix so many things on this camper, and they call them like bomb tires, and because the tires they put on there typically are just to get by. Just to maybe I can take it on a run or look around, whatever, but put new tires on if you're going somewhere, get new something, at least if you're driving, because he was driving from, states to states on these tires that obviously was a bad idea. Yeah. And so, and you get little tips and tricks from other campers, in the winter time. I've stayed there was a polar vortex in one of the places that Gage and I both lived in at one time. And it got down to like -30 or something with the wind chill, and trying to stay like the camper has limitations of insulation. And so I had my heater was constantly, my propane was constantly running. So that's going to cost you money.
To be fair, nothing is really built for -30. So
no. Yeah. My fridge gave out, my fridge broke. Yeah. And so luckily that was still within warranty. So I did get a new fridge put in. I had a heated electric blanket. I had my heater. I had like a little fireplace that was also like a heat source. And so I had that blowing. It was miserable during that. It was not just miserable for me in the camper. It was miserable for everybody because it's -30 outside. Yeah. And so that's that's cold. But it was a cool experience. I bought this is like an aside story. I bought a cooler and used that for a fridge because it was so cold outside that you could just put everything outside.
Stick it outside.
Yeah, literally put it outside. And I didn't have any water. Everything was frozen. And so I would go to the gym and fill up like jugs of water and use jugs of water for cleaning dishes, for like, maybe that sounds like really gross or something. I don't know, but I made do with what I needed to do yeah, like sometimes I'd clean it, dishes at work, whatever you got to do. Like, people understand that like this is not my home. Like I'm just making by here, but I loved it. Like it was one of the coolest. Like looking back, it was a really cool story. At the time, like man, it was like this really sucks.
Pain in the ass, I'm sure. Yeah.
It sucks so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
But looking back, you're like I learned a lot of stuff, like how to fix different things. And then we had like an auto leveling system on our camper, and so sometimes the auto leveling wouldn't auto level, and like I slept, it didn't auto level, and it was like scary how it did not. Like one side was like completely up, and the other side was like down, and I don't understand why it would not auto level, but I slept on like one side of the bed because like we were scared to you like roll over to like I like or a good gust of wind and like the camper's going over, and so like there's scary things about that.
Yeah.
I mean, probably just as scary as going and staying at somebody's Airbnb or furnished finder home that that has like shaky, like not the best lock system or like whatever it
Yeah.
is, like you're not the best neighborhoods. I
Yeah.
think I always felt safer probably in the camper because the cool thing was most of the people, you think of camper, you think like sometimes, I don't know, mentally I've had people think like shady things, but like there's nothing shady that I really ever experienced in a camper. A lot of the people that were around me were other nurses, physical therapists, other people working at the hospital. And so you see like all these people and they're
I mean,
all like,
it's a campground, right? Not a trailer park. That's
yeah,
where
yeah,
trailer
yeah,
park is where things
exactly.
get.
And I think some people think that's one and the same sometimes, and it's not.
Yeah.
Like it's not a trailer park. Like it's you go to
It's an
these
insult.
campgrounds, yeah, and you see some of these campers. You're like, man, this camper is like $100,000 camper. That's
Yeah.
just like a monstrous or 200. All these super expensive. You're like, these guys, like this is not.
Yeah.
These people have like a lot of money, and so you're not like worried about these people or the people that are going to try to rob you or something.
Yeah.
And so I think given the opportunity, I would stay in the campground again for sure. Like that's one of the coolest experiences if you ever get to experience it.
I do like I agree with your spiel, sentiment, because I did the same thing when I first rented for residency. That my renter or rentee, whatever, the landlord,
Yeah.
only rented to medical students, residents, and fellows for the exact reason that you just talked about. One, they knew we would be more likely to be professional, not tear stuff up.
Right.
Two, they knew our income was pretty much guaranteed, which COVID proved. Right? Like we didn't ever stop working even during a pandemic.
Right.
So it was. I think landlords really want that security more so. They know they can get a good tenant for a good amount of time, and they're likely not going to lose any money. It's just easy money, passive money for them. So I like the spiel that you say, hey, this is what I do for a living. This is how long I'll be here. I think it's a little different now that I'm about to try and rent in where I'm moving.
Right.
And I'm a little scared because now I think they might take advantage of me, because if they see a lot of people want, if you've never rented before, a lot of people want income, proof of income.
Right.
But I could give them my fellow, W-2s from my fellowship, which is not as good as it's what it's going to be. But a lot of renters want X amount more, for rent, whatever, for your income versus rent. So if they see my income and they're like, you don't make enough, to live here.
Yeah.
I don't want to show them my real contract because then they're like, well, now I don't think I'm charging you enough.
Yeah. Rent's gone up.
Yeah. So that can be tricky.
Yeah. That's a crummy thing. I feel like, whatever they want to charge, like they agree to the price. But yeah, I mean, some people, I can imagine that if they see you're making a substantially lot more, then maybe they feel like, okay, we can get more from this guy because this is where he wants to stay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think.
So in that situation, this is an aside, but if in that situation, I'm just going to walk away. Like
for sure,
it's not like you're the only house in the area that I'm looking to rent. Like if you want to be a scumbag, I'm out of here. So
yeah, for real, yeah, because if they're a scumbag, they're going to be a bad landlord. They're going to be it's not worth it. So I think I haven't had a lot of people that, and when I'm staying at Furnished Finder, I haven't had people ask me for like income statements.
Yeah.
I feel like, I guess they just believe.
I mean, maybe you don't have to because you say I'm a travel nurse. So a quick Google search could say, roughly here's what a travel nurse makes, so they know
Right.
you're going to make enough money to live there, or they don't care
Right.
because you're going to get the paycheck and you're going to have to pay rent, so they're going to get their money regardless. So
Right.
maybe they don't care as much about income.
Right. And I was at one of the places that I ended up not renting at. They told me, they're like, we get 6 phone calls a day for this place, but I saw your message and you said you were a travel
See?
healthcare nurse,
Yeah.
whatever, and we wanted to rent to you first. We wanted to give you the opportunity to take this place first because we want to support the healthcare folks, and
Yeah.
we're not trying to charge an arm and a leg. We're trying to make some money and
Hmm.
allow you guys to do your jobs. And so I was like, the spiel was a smart idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
I mean, it
yeah,
can
yeah,
help. I'm sure policemen, firefighters, I'm sure a whole bunch of EMTs get all that, the same
right,
thing. So you
right,
just have to know when to use your, um, title and when not to use it. I don't tell
yeah,
people that I'm a doctor all the time. It's not something
yeah,
that
yeah,
in the daily world.
right.
So,
And I,
but if I think it'll help me, of course I'm going to try and use it.
yeah, I knew somebody who, this is like a crazy story, but I knew somebody who used their doctor title a lot. They actually got a lot of speeding tickets, and
Oh yeah.
so they put
Yeah.
they put MD on the back of their car.
Yeah.
So when they get pulled over, maybe the police officer wouldn't give them another speeding ticket.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah,
Hopefully it worked out for him.
yeah, I hope so too. Whatever. Yeah. Okay, so that was kind of like the lodging living thing.
Yep.
That hopefully that answered some of your guys' questions. If you have any more, obviously reach out. We'll go through how you reach out again at the end, like we always do. The next
Okay,
thing
so
we're
now
gonna,
we want to do some Reddit stuff.
yeah, let's do it.
We have a question left over from last time. We'll do that after this. But I was scrolling and I saw, I think it was the ultrasound subreddit.
Mm,
So it was a question from a patient, and they pretty much wanted to know if their experience was an average experience. So I thought it would be good to go through, since we have both sides of the coin, what an average experience would be for someone that's coming in to get an ultrasound. And I think you can just pick it doesn't matter what type. I mean, it does matter what type, but just pick like a basic right upper quadrant or kidney ultra, something,
right.
super simple.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's say the family medicine doctor orders one of these exams. The patient, they put it in, however that works. The patient shows up at the hospital
Mm-hmm.
to the ultrasound department or waiting room, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So then you take over. I don't know if you go get them, somebody else just take over from when they show up they've checked in and they're in the waiting room waiting to be seen.
Yeah. So I think, okay. So yeah, depending on where you're at, like you said, either we'll go grab them or the aide or somebody will go grab them, put them in the room. I usually have the room pre-set up, and so they're coming in. I got a clean sheet. We'll
Mm-hmm.
say we're just going to do like an abdomen ultrasound, and so I'll explain to them what we're doing. Usually, like we're doing a right upper quadrant, I'll say we're going to look at your liver, your pancreas, your gallbladder, your right kidney, common bile duct, portal vein. I want to tell them everything that I'm looking at. And so, because they might have, the family medicine doctor may have said like, oh, we think that there's an issue with your gallbladder. And so they order this. So they think they're coming in. We're just going to do a gallbladder. Some
Yep.
places they come in and say, okay, we're going to look at your gallbladder. But I want to let them know that, if I'm not just looking at one organ. So if my exam takes me 15 minutes, I haven't just spent 15 minutes looking at your one organ, having you
Mm-hmm.
roll on your side. And with a gallbladder, we also have to have you at least roll left lateral on your left side to roll to see if you have any stones, if any stones are rolling,
Yeah. Move. Yeah.
they're moving or sludge or any issues with kind of a thing. It just allows us to see the gallbladder better in 2 different ways. And so I think that I usually will tuck in a towel to their shirt. We're trying to keep the gel off the clothes the best they can. Although the gel won't hurt your clothes, a little bit of water come right out. It's water soluble gel that we use. We use a warmer. I've worked at places that don't have warmers for
I thought
whatever
that was standard. We use a
for
warmer here
whatever
too.
reason. I worked at a place that they didn't. So you have to be able to. I don't know if it's JCO or whatever DNV or whatever DMV, that you have to be able to tell what temperature the gel is. Because I have to know that I'm not going to burn you. And so this
Yeah.
place didn't have a way of reading the temperature So they just got rid of all warmers because it was just like a generalized standard, like you put it in and it would make it warm. But
So
I
it's just
couldn't
room
say,
temperature gel.
yeah, depending on how cold that room is, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you hit them with that, and they're just like, woo, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And like anybody would be, like, you have somebody with cold gel. And what's funny is a lot of my patients now, I tell them, I'm going to put some cold gel on your body. And I don't know. I say that because when I hit them with the warm gel, they're like pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
And so, because a lot of
That's
patients will be
fair.
like, yeah, like even, I've had patients that like, I don't know, like their moms were in the room, they were a little younger or whatever. And they're like, their mom, when they had their pregnancy ultrasound, they had cold gel 20 years ago or whatever it was.
Yeah, of
And so
course.
they're like telling them, like, get ready for the cold stuff. And then you throw it on, you put them on, and they're like, oh, that's really warm.
Nothing's changed in 20 years, but yeah, good.
Yeah, get ready for the cold gel. And then you hit them, and then they're like pleasantly surprised. And I feel like maybe you get better reviews if they're expecting it's cold gel and you put
Yeah.
something on them that's warm. And so I think that's like a little thing that I put in there. Tuck towels, and whether you need to put it in the pants or the shirt or wherever, how
Hmm.
wherever you think you might get gel on their clothes, we try to keep them as clean as possible. I think it's impossible for their skin to not feel sticky. The gel just feels sticky after you wipe it off until you put some water on it and rinse it off. You have them throughout this particular exam. They'll probably have to take in deep breaths and hold it,
Yeah.
just because if you're, as you're breathing, your organs are moving, your diaphragm, and so everything goes kind of up and down. It's kind of like trying to take a picture while you're like driving down the road. And so
Yeah.
sometimes you'd go to a stop sign and you're at you're not breathing for that half of a second as you're finishing exhaling or finishing inhaling. And so I'll catch a picture there, but I'll have you take a deep breath and hold it. It kind of brings everything down and stops the movement. And so I can get some better images. And so that's like a common thing if you're getting an abdominal ultrasound. So expect to have a towel tucked in, expect to have hopefully warm gel, maybe cold. Taking deep breaths and holding it, probably it could be a lot of times there's no like set number. And I think another question that I get often is, how many images am I going to take? Like, how many pictures am I going to take? And
Yeah.
for that, there's no set answer. I worked at hospitals that have protocols put in, and so you take the same 50 images or same 60 images or whatever that is. But you
Hmm.
also, if I see something, it goes from that 50 images to maybe I'm taking 75 images because I need to evaluate something a little more closely. And so I think there's that built into place. So sometimes I guess you can give a generalized answer if you yourself know, based on the right upper quadrants or abdomens or whatever exams that you've done. I know I take about this many images just to kind of get them an understanding. Maybe they
Hmm.
count the pictures because you can hear the noise. I don't think I've ever worked on a machine that doesn't make this like whenever you take the
Yeah.
picture, or whatever that sounds like. I don't know. I think so. Those are some of the big questions I think that if you're coming in for an exam to expect. Maybe at some point we'll go over like other modalities, well, CTs or
Yeah.
MRIs, nuclear things like Gage will probably go into deeper with that kind of stuff. I think that's usually covered. And then obviously at the end of the exam, not every patient, but I'm going to say every patient asks me, what are the results? And then that's when I have
Yeah.
to say, your doctor should be the one to go over those results. Typically we get the results to your doctor in X amount of days. And then, your doctor should reach out to you within 2 business days or however. Sometimes
Hmm.
some doctors are mid-level practitioners, whoever they're going to see. They'll have them set up for another appointment, or sometimes they just give them a phone call. I know Gage is one of his favorite things they use now is that My Chart. Um,
Oh God. Yeah. 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 We could. Well.
I'll finish.
Yeah.
And then so I'll say, they'll get in touch with you, or sometimes, and this is to not like, I don't want anybody to be afraid, but if if somebody goes out and says, hey, I'm going to grab another sonographer to take another look, we're not giving you like, don't be afraid of doing that. We're essentially getting either a second opinion, or we want to be justified on our opinion,
Yeah.
or I want somebody maybe who has more experience with seeing something. We're doing what's best for your care. It's like, another doctor who for an example, a doctor who talks to another doctor who just wants, I'm thinking this, what are you thinking? And so we're trying to do what's best for you. And sometimes another sonographer will come in and take another second look at one particular thing or whatever that is. Sometimes the radiologist comes in and they want to take a look for themselves. They've looked at the images and they're just like, okay, I believe you, but I kind of want to see it for myself. Because sometimes it's kind of like watching a movie or something. You're like, okay, I believe it. But like, if you were there when it happened, you're like, oh, I saw it with my own two eyes. Like, so sometimes they want to come in and take a look as well. And these are all like common, normal things that happen on a day-to-day basis. And so this is not out of the ordinary for it to happen. So I don't want people to think like, oh no, like,
that's probably the first thing that goes through their mind is like, oh no, something's wrong.
right.
Like you brought back a second person, like something has to be wrong. Now they're panicking, justifiably if they don't, because they don't understand what's going on. So I think that's a good point to know that sometimes it's just, even like you said, other doctors, radiologists who do it all the time. Mm-hmm. If you have like, depending on how your setup is in terms of your reading room, if it's a community room, it's super easy. We just ask, right? We just look over and ask, hey, I have this case. Can you take a quick look? Like you said, I think it's X. What do you think? And they're like, oh, maybe it could be. Maybe it's also Y or Z.
Right.
So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I found that it's easier to group think, right? Groups, or you think of more. Mm-hmm. And it's easier if you talk it out loud, which is usually what we do as radiologists. We talk about it out loud, and you're like, oh yeah, now that we're talking about it, I think of this too. So it's not always a bad thing.
Yeah. And even your mechanic, I mean, if you get your car fixed, I'm sure that there's certain things.
Everybody does it.
Yeah. Everybody communicates with each other if they have a question, or if sometimes you just want confirmation. You're like, I'm 100% sure this is right, but on the off chance that you disagree with me, I would rather you take a look at it. And if we agree, that's great. And so I think, and then from there I would, show you the way out, or the person would take you out. Yeah. We would clean up afterwards, and that would be the end of your exam. That's something like, I guess.
So, then when you're done with your part, I don't know if it works this way everywhere, but usually where I've been, you guys come back to us with the images. And I think I don't know how most radiologists feel about this, but I would prefer you do it before you send the patient home. That way, if I'm like, oh, I need you to go back and get more images of this. So hopefully you've done it before. Yeah. If not, then we have to call the patient back. It's not a big deal, but it's inconvenient for them, unfortunately. But what happens is when he finishes, he gets his images, he sends them through to the PACS is what it's called, to look at the images. And then he'll come back, and usually you guys have like a sheet or something, whether it's a standardized sheet or just a piece of paper that you have filled out that says, here's what I think I saw. And then we look at the images, right? Mm-hmm. And you tell us, this is what I saw. And then the radiologist will say, yes, no, yada, 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 whatever. So we kind of look at the images briefly with you. Mm-hmm. And then if we give the okay, you go back, and then you're like, okay, whatever. Patient, the radiologist is fine. We can let you go, whatever. So then you finish the setup. You send the rest of everything through. So now it's finally ready to be dictated. So it will show up on our list, and then we click it. We know briefly, most radiologists remember, oh, this is what Dennis said, but if not, at least where I trained for residency, they scanned it in. Your piece of paper was also part of the data set. Right. So we can look. If we don't remember what you said, we just scroll to the piece of paper and said, oh, this is what it is. Yep. So then we formally interpret it, which is where we dictate it. We put our thoughts on the paper, give the findings, the impression, or whatever, depending on how long it takes. Once you're done, you finalize it, and then it goes out into the ether, which is where Dennis brought up my chart. I think in the previous, 10, 15 years, the person that ordered it would be the person that tells you what it says, which is probably why most people don't know that radiology exists. And they probably think the ordering provider read it, and then this is what they're seeing. But that probably still happens. But with the invention of my chart, the person on Reddit, actually, that's how they found out, is they said they left 30 minutes, I think, and like 30 to 45 minutes later, their report was in my chart because it was a negative exam. So the radiologist was like, a negative, boom, done. Yeah. So I think in today's day and age, the report, if you have a my chart or whatever it's called at your institution, where you have access to your records, it will be available, pretty soon after we read it. I don't know what the if it's a day or 2 day, whatever. But it will be available probably in your MyChart before your ordering provider gets the results.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, that's how most people find out, is through the MyChart. We talked off camera. I'm not a huge fan of MyChart. I think it's good to have access to your own medical records, obviously. Right. But I think when it comes to, there's two specifically, radiology and pathology. Just to be frank, the average person is not going to have a clue as to what we're saying in that report.
Right.
So then you're trying to it's like speaking a different language. You're trying to interpret this report that you don't know anything about. You can't look at the images unless you're a radiologist. You don't know what you're looking at on the images either.
Right.
So I think it creates a lot of issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If we mention maybe not ultrasound, but a whole bunch of incidental stuff. If you're a radiologist that mentions, and I'm not a huge incidental guy, so if I see a granuloma or something, I usually don't. Mm-hmm. But if you mention it, my mom actually, I don't know, a month ago got a chest CT maybe, and it said granuloma, and she's like, "What the hell is that?" I'm like, "This is why I don't put this stuff in there."
Yeah,
because now I have to either you're going to freak out and be like, "Oh God, what's a granuloma?"
Right.
Even though in the Midwest, everybody has it.
Yeah.
So it's a benign thing. So I'm like, do I really want to put the patient through the anxiety of either you have to look up a granuloma, you're going to ask somebody, or you're going to ask your doctor, and then what if they don't know what it is?
Right.
So I think it's just a slippery slope for people to have access to the report itself.
Right.
I mean, I get it, but
it's tough. Yeah. Because I feel like it's nice because they have the opportunity, they have the access to their results, and they can, if you're going from one state to state and you need to show your new doctor these results, like you have your MyChart and I can pull this up and they can review what the radiologist said. But if you yourself are looking at it, and instead of following back up with your doctor and them explaining to you exactly what all this means, and you're just using it just for yourself, I think, that's like you don't want to Google yourself into oblivion and be confused on what are the next steps that I need to take, trying to figure it out yourself. And so, I mean, it's like, I used a car example in the past. It's like, I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know. If you say all these like random car things to me, I have no idea. I have no idea what you're talking about, but I know I need to talk to a mechanic about it who probably knows. And so with you guys, the same concept. Like, I need to follow up with my doctor. I need to not just take this upon myself to understand what it means. And so it's got its benefits and its deficiencies. That's crazy. That's a quick turnaround. 35 minutes. Like that's
I mean,
crazy.
It depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
We read for fellowship. We read everything within a 24 hours. So it's at least a minimum a maximum 1 day turnaround time. Yep. If you're at a group, another aside, radiology is very short, right? There's just not enough of us. So if you go to like a smaller private practice group, you could be waiting. I read a Doximity article that said like 1 to 6 weeks. These guys were just so far behind. They're just getting buried, which is dangerous. That's another story, another topic for a different day. But I don't want people to think 30 minutes is standard. It's not standard unless it's a stat study.
Right,
if it's a stat study, then we have an hour to turn it around. But your time will vary. I think my point was just usually we read it long before you get the results. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you're waiting on results, more than likely it's not because of us. It's just your provider hasn't called to talk to you about it. So
and I think I threw that in my spiel too, because I always say that like our rad will have this read within probably today. It'll be done within most likely today, and then we send the results to your ordering provider, whomever that is, and then they'll get it within, we say, 2 to 3 business days, and then that's on them to either call you with those results, or do you need to reach out to them and set up another appointment? Like, I always make sure that I want to tell the patients, because I don't want, I don't know, I don't speak for anybody else, but I feel like maybe somebody can forget and realize they didn't go over results with them.
Oh, very easily.
I've had patients come in and tell me, I was like, oh, okay, so I saw you had a CT a year ago and you have gallstones, and we're going to look at the gallstones today. And they're like, I don't have gallstones.
No idea.
Like, I didn't know I had gallstones. And you're like, okay, like, well, I don't mean to be the person to inform you, but like, I looked at your report, and according to your report, that's what it says. And I can't blame them, because I mean, they could look at the report and have no idea what that means. Yeah. So somebody needs to
No, it's on
their
the ordering
doctor.
provider
Yeah,
to
the ordering
sit down
provider
and go
needs
through
to,
that.
yeah, obligation to follow up with them and make sure that they have an understanding of what's going on and what's next. So I think it has its benefits for sure. And another aside, and so at the place that you're at, I've worked at other places that for the sonographer impression, it's something that we just do digitally, and so we write it. And then it comes to you guys, and you can see just what we've written, and so we don't have to scan in those worksheets. Which I think the worksheets
Yeah.
are beneficial because, especially if you wanted me to write, like if I'm doing a carotid or a kidney or whatever, and
Yeah.
you want me to like circle where the cyst is on the kidney, or tell you like I'm
I think
seeing.
it's especially helpful for vascular stuff.
Oh, for
So
sure.
you can tell me where it's at,
Mm-hmm.
a DVT, whatever. I think the carotids, I think that's helpful. So
Yeah. So it's had its benefits with the worksheets versus just digitally writing it out or whatever it is. The future would be like, it'd be nice to have something, a digital worksheet that I could just write it on there and then it just automatically scans it in.
yeah,
But I don't know. That's just
I'm
thinking
sure it'll
ahead.
happen.
Yeah, it should already
All right,
exist.
we're getting close. Do you want to do the pet peeves or do you want to do the question? That we'll pick one or the other.
Let's do the question.
The fun question?
That's what you like. Let's do the fun
Oh yeah,
question.
it's my
I know
favorite
that's
part.
your
This
favorite
one's
part.
a little more. I tried to in the past. We picked kind of less serious
Mm-hmm.
topics. This one's a little bit more serious, and I don't know where I got the idea. I think I just thought of this on my own.
Yeah.
But so today's question will be: if you were going to start a charity, what type of charity would you pick and why?
I think, and I've thought about this. I feel like the type of charity that I would want to start would be something to do with like alcoholics.
Okay.
Um, I have a I know a lot of people that struggle with alcoholism. I obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and I see a lot of patients that continue to be out. I think once you're
Yeah.
an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic, even after you stop drinking, because the next drink could cause you to go back.
Set it off. Yeah.
Yeah, set it off. And so even if you've like, I think Chris Carter, famous wide receiver, always said like, I'm still an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink in 30 years or whatever it is, but I'm
Yeah.
still an alcoholic because one drink and I'll go back. And so I see patients all the time with paracentesis that are fluid because they can't stop drinking. And so I've had a lot of family that have been alcoholics. And so I'd love to have like a charity that allows people to go through rehab and detox, that sets them up to talk to therapists and
Yeah.
the appropriate amount of people to where they can forever kick this habit that ruins families and lives. And if you're not able to drink responsibly, which I know a lot of, like, you meet people that should never obviously drink, a drop in their life, and I've seen it directly influence families and destroy people. And so I think if I could have a charity that could help people that maybe, like people that need to be off work for a month or or a
Mm-hmm.
longer period, extended period of time, but you can't afford to be off not working because I got to pay my
Yeah.
bill, whatever it is. So if I could have a center that you could come and not work, just focus on your health, focus on whatever they need to work on, because that's out of my wheelhouse. But that's what I would love to have, a charity that would help maybe save lives, families, kids,
Be a good
drunk.
one.
Yeah, drunk.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that this affects,
Yeah.
negative.
Alcoholism is a huge issue. So that
Yeah,
would be a good one.
yeah,
And it's not something you think about in terms of quitting. Everyone thinks quitting, right? You think of that part, but you don't think of the steps it takes to get there, the steps after,
right,
if someone quits.
right. The detox process, and I've directly noticed, had somebody in my life that recently went through a detox and sadly went back to drinking. But
I mean, detox for alcoholism specifically is life threatening. It can kill you.
yeah,
So it's a huge deal. It's not like,
yeah,
I mean, weed, I guess, if you're trying to, quote unquote detox from marijuana, that's not going to kill you. But
right,
DT from alcoholism can kill
right,
you and has killed people. So,
right. Yeah, it's a scary thing to just, and I mean that, the people that, and it's interesting that I won't get into all the social stuff, but like if you go out somewhere and you don't have a drink, the people are wondering why. Why aren't you drinking?
Oh, I can speak to that
Yeah.
because I think you mentioned in one of I don't drink for the exact reason that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I have experienced it as well, but
Right.
you're almost like to use my hair color, you're the redheaded stepchild, right? Like everyone's like, you're the odd man out. Why are you not drinking? It's kind of
Right.
weird. And
Yeah.
in reality, it's like, no, it's kind of weird that you guys are so heavily involved, and like drinking is the center of, like, we're at a baseball game, but drinking is the center of what you're doing.
Right.
Then we go to dinner and still drinking is, no, I'm not the weird one here. You guys are kind of the ones that are
right. And you want to know why, like why, and
they always want to know why.
It's such a weird thing that people want to know, why are you not doing something that we're all engaged in?
And it's usually like a personal reason, right? So if you're out having fun and everyone's like, oh, why don't you drink? You're instantly going to kill the mood if you tell them why you don't drink.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't, I've told my friends, I tell you guys why I don't drink, but
right.
if I'm like meeting a person, like I'm on a date for the first time and
right.
she's like, why don't you drink? I'm like, we're not going to, I would instantly kill the mood and I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So I think the overall point is just know that the person has a reason for not wanting to drink. Why? It doesn't matter why.
Right.
Just don't ask them and give them water or whatever they're drinking, buy them that stuff, but
right.
just don't ask why.
I agree. And then, I sometimes I think about, like, if I could get some of those, and I don't even know if it'd make a difference, like similar, like when you're training for your driver's ed training and they show you all these like crazy car wrecks and stuff like that to kind of like scare you into driving safer. If I could show some of these people who are alcoholics, who we have, every once a week coming in to have fluid drain from their belly and they continue to drink, like, would that be like a scared straight another method? I don't know, but I would love to create something for people who are struggling but want help.
Yeah.
And be able to help those folks that know, I can't not be off my job for a month, 2 months, whatever it is, but I want
if you cover living expenses and that kind of I never thought about that part. That's a good thought.
Yeah.
So mine's not even remotely as deep as that. Yeah. I think mine is. I don't think it's a bigger issue. Yours is more personal and it's related to health, so I think it hits a chord more. Mine is also personal, but it's not like ruining my life or anything like that. Yeah. So I think I've told you what I wanted to do, but I've thought of this before. As a doctor, I have just a massive amount of student debt, right? So, and I'm not the only one that has student debt. The bubble for loan debt is massive.
Right.
I'm sure if you talk to some economists, it could, it could collapse the economy, whatever. So my thought was wanting to create something to pay off people's loans, right? I would specifically avoid high income earners like myself. I wouldn't pay off other doctors' loans, right? Because we're going to make enough money that it doesn't matter. So I would like to focus on people that are either way behind or they just can't keep up with, you see stories all the time of, I've paid $26,000 in loans on a $30,000 loan, but I still owe $26,000 because they just can't keep up with the interest.
Right.
And these loan companies it's predatory, right? It's crazy. I signed loans at like 18. I had no idea what I was signing. None. No. And if I didn't become a doctor, I would be hosed at this point in time. I couldn't pay that stuff back. And so,
as Gary Vee says, Gary Vee says, he's like, if you sign for a loan for debt that you literally can't go bankrupt and get rid of, like.
Yeah. I mean, nobody tells you that when you're 18.
Yeah.
It's easy to say that when Gary Vee's 50 or however old. Like, it's easy to say that.
Yeah.
But when you're 18, you come from lower middle class, whatever we came from, that my parents were not informed on this. Right. They just knew I was going to college and I needed money for it. So they had to co-sign the loans, and nobody, you don't teach this stuff in high school. So if I could create some kind of like recurring not-profit organization where people essentially would donate, right? The thought would be to get famous people involved, and they could donate, and then you just call one of these companies, and I don't know how it works, but if you just call them and say, pick somebody, pay it off. And then in theory, it would become a domino effect, right? Like the people you pay off would then donate whatever they could to keep the ball rolling. So you would just have this recurring donation that would then we could just keep paying people's loans.
Right.
So not realistic, I'm sure. I'm sure there's other companies that do it, but I think student loan debt is just something that's personal to me, and it's a huge issue currently in America. And
it cripples. And I've thought so much about the student loan crisis. I mean, and I think the biggest thing with the student loan thing is interest rates. I think interest rates just destroy people. I mean, because you might be able to, if you want to get a house and you want to buy it's $500,000 home, I'm going to look at how much you're making, how much blah, 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 and decide you can't afford a $500,000 home, or you can't afford whatever that is.
Yeah.
But if you want to go to school and spend $500,000 to go to school,
no problem.
We'll give that to you. And that's great if they become something that they're making, a lot of money a year, and they can pay back that $500,000, $1 million, whatever loan, or they have family members that are going to kick in and help them out. I think that's great. I think a lot of people get debts in different degrees that doesn't pay as well, and they wanted to go to a private school, or they made, you don't know. You go to this school and you don't realize how expensive it is at 18, how much, maybe you don't necessarily know how much that dollar is really worth, or those thousands of dollars, and you don't realize that I owe, $200,000 or $300,000, and I make $80,000 a year, and so to pay that back, it's going to take me 20 years, or whatever that is, and then I'm going to throw you 8% interest on top of it. I think if they could find a way to lower interest rates. I mean, you can't make interest rate zero, because then no one will ever pay it back. But I think if you could make it 2%, 3%, something that's low enough to where it's still gaining money for whomever it is, you're not completely destroying somebody, and then having a system created in place, like you said, that we give back. I mean, some countries, college is free; it's paid for by the government. But your taxes are substantially higher. And so it's and then you get into the debate where people said, I paid for my own school. Why do I have to pay for your school? I don't want my taxes to be higher because I paid $500,000 in student debt. Why don't you pay yours? And we have different things in place, but I think having another separate program, because this is America, and if you incur debt, you have to pay for your debts with schooling. I think that would be a great thing to have for people who are better off, or for people who can afford it. If you're paying, if you have a recurring, you're like your Netflix account, it's $15 a month. And so $15 a month I put into this pool that is completely 100% of all proceeds are donated to paying off student debts, and people apply for their student debts to be paid off, and it's picked whoever you're going to pay down or pay off. I think it would make the most amount of sense that you can pay off people, because then if that person gets paid off, maybe they're more likely to say, okay, well, my $50,000 was paid off. I can afford $10 a month for 10 years for the rest of my life, or whatever it is. And so it's kind of people helping people.
And it eliminates the crowd that you mentioned about, oh, I paid mine off, why can't you? Because if you don't want to do it, then you don't do it. It's a voluntary basis. So you can't bitch and moan that you're paying off someone else's loans, because it's just voluntary. And I'm sure there are plenty of people that would help.
Sure.
And it's a huge, it's like twofold. You're helping out the person. You're also, in some regard, helping out the government and the economy, because this bubble is, it's a mess. The amount of student loan debt is incredible, and it's only going to keep going up until something drastic happens. So, it'd be nice to help.
It'll truly, and you're correct. I've seen a lot of economists say that this is going to cripple our economy. This is going to destroy our economy because the amount of debts. I think if you could even make it like a tax write-off for people, if you're donating,
it'll cripple the economy right after I make my last payment.
When you pay off all your debt, and it cripples, and everything, they decide to step in. That's the world. You can't. You just go along. You do your best, whatever. if they end up paying
All right,
everybody
so
else.
those were a little deeper, right? We don't usually do serious,
No.
but yours was way deeper than mine. But
Well, when you said that, I really you were like, and think
thought
about
about
it.
it.
And I
Yeah,
was like, okay, let me really think about this. And so I put some
yeah.
thought into it.
All right, we reached the 60-minute mark again somehow.
Somehow, every episode. I'm sorry, guys. We kill it in time.
We're trying. I'm gonna let you give the
Okay.
social media stuff. See if you remember it.
Yeah. So reach out to us: Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Rad_Talk_DG. If I said that right, correct me. If I said it wrong.
So so the TikTok and Instagram, it's Rad_Talk_DG. I
Right.
think for Spotify, Podbean, and Apple, it's you just search Rad Talk.
Rad Talk, right.
And we'll show up. So
and then email radtalkwithdg@gmail.com. I remember that one. I'm
yeah, with any questions.
or
it's
hit
traveling.
us up on or Reddit. Gage is on Reddit.
I am on Reddit. Yeah. I'll do some perusing, see if I can get some promotion going. But
right. But we look forward. We'll have another episode out for you guys. I don't know. We're knocking these things out, so I don't know when we're gonna.
We are. Yeah, we recorded this back to back, but you guys won't hear it until I don't know, a week from now or whatever. But
yeah, who knows? But all right. Well, regardless, talk to you guys soon. Take care.
All right. See you in the next.